No Guts, No Galaxy is recorded in front of a live studio audience. This is an adult podcast containing adult language. Consider yourself warned.
Hello again, mech fans. You know, sometimes I get the urge to walk around the mech bays of Solaris 7, and lately I've noticed a disturbing trend. I see these mech jocks wandering around confused, rummaging through their inventories of parts like they've forgotten how to stack their equipment. So I'd like to just remind you folks to please stack your gear properly. It's better to take your time than to be smashed beneath a box of 3,472 units of standard armor you've had laying around for the last year.
You're listening to the Gamecasting Broadcast Network. Live from the Outreach Studios around the world, this is a No Guts, No Galaxy podcast. And now, your host, Phil, a.k.a. Sean Lang.
Welcome to the No Guts, No Galaxy podcast number 102. My name is Phil, and I'm your host. Today is February 5th, 2014, and I am joined by Brandon, a.k.a. Catrikel.
Hello.
Jason, a.k.a. The Centurion.
Hello.
And special guest host Tyler, a.k.a. Jaeger12.
Hello.
All right, guys. Patched week. Obviously, a lot to talk about. Some of the things are a little bit too early, but there are some things we can go ahead and dive into. And first up on the discussion topic is, let's talk about weapon modules. Obviously, they introduced Tier 1 and 2 weapon modules yesterday on the patch. What are your guys' initial thoughts on this, and do you see them as being actually, viable? Would you take them over, I don't know, a Arty Strike?
I picked up the first couple levels of AC5 just because it's such a prevalent weapon, just to play around with it. But I don't think that they're currently in their current version worth skipping an Artemis Strike or anything like that for.
In the current form, I don't think they do enough. I mean, modules are supposed to go up to level 5, so I mean, if they follow the same trend and numbers and stuff like that, and you scale it, I mean, once we get around Tier 4 and 5, we might be able to see them being more viable than other things. Right now, the only thing that's really viable, or I would probably recommend to people over something else in the module slot, would maybe be the AMS weapon module.
Now, for someone out there, before I get Tyler's response, they're Tier 1 through 2 right now. Obviously, it's going to go up to Tier 5. If you were to look at the small laser or medium laser, what is a Tier 1 and what is a Tier 2? It's basically an increase in the long range, so you can imagine the effective range. But it's also very small increments, and then you get a small increment of heat increase. So even if you were to have a Tier 5 level medium laser upgrade module upgrade, you're only talking about max 80, not even 80 meters to the long range. Again, would you take that over? Now that would affect all of your medium lasers. Would you guys take that over any of the other stuff? But let's go ahead and ask Tyler.
For now, no. Tier 1 and 2 are kind of underwhelming, and artillery, air strikes, and cool shot 9x9 is just way more effective in a game. It's going to be far more likely to determine or impact the outcome of a game. The only weapon system we're kind of looking at right now is possibly the ER large laser, and only to be used with the Raven for 3L, because it has tons of module slots.
For that additional effective, it's at 650, and then it pushed out to 750, and then that would actually be pretty beneficial.
Yeah, we'll see about what the Tier 3 through 5 look like, but right now Tier 1 and 2 aren't very significant.
So basically we're running into the same, or I should say, obviously it's still new, but just, I guess, theory crafting right now. The effectiveness against other modules, why would you take one over the other? For instance, seismic sensor back before it had the nerf to it, you always took it. I mean, it was just one of those things. What changes would they have to do to the weapon modules, and would you... Well, let's go ahead and tackle that. What changes right off the bat would you guys take as far as looking at the weapon modules?
I'd be willing to do it the opposite. I think we're with the ghost heat and things like that, we already get kind of heat starved with certain configs. and so extra range for heat, it's okay. But I'd be willing to do the opposite. I would trade range for decreased heat.
Yeah, there's not much more they can do. The primary problem is that it takes up a module slot, and I've heard them talk about possibly putting in other module slots specifically for these kinds of upgrades, which would make them much more desirable to look into.
So instead of it just being a universal module slot like how it is right now, and this is actually something I was going to talk about, is introduce actual weapon modules and or equipment modules and stuff like that. That way you can get a little bit more specific and you're not having to totally negate, because like right now some modules totally negate all the use of others, and you would probably constantly run into that even with the incentive of increased range or a little bit decreased heat, when at the end of the day, why do you guys take the airstrikes in Arty? It's because they do massive amounts of damage and you can take out someone and or affect the battle. Would that be the same for some of these models? I'm going to go out on a limb and say unless and until they introduce weapon module slots or equipment module slots, I don't think these will really be used, or at least I'm not going to be using them. And I guess that's I'm not saying no one's going to use them. I just don't really see, for me personally, I would rather take target decay than getting extra 20, 50 meters on a medium laser when, taking 2 steps forward in my mech is going to give me that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and as far as combinations they could do, there's a few more combinations, like they could decrease range but increase damage slightly, or decrease beam duration on some weapons but increase heat. There's just a lot of combinations they could do. But also, these weapon modules are incredibly expensive for what they do. You need to buy so many of them if you want to, change out for all your mechs.
You're saying GXP. How many GXP is for tier 1?
It's not even that. C-bills, man. They're still 3 million a piece.
Well, I know. Okay, so how much is GXP to upgrade? Is it still 15,000?
I'm trying to remember. I only got the large laser one.
Okay, I'd have to look. Someone laser saying 500 GXP to 700. That's actually not that much GXP.
No, it's the C-bills that kill it, though. I mean, if we're talking people, if they want people to use the modules, and I mean, let's just say hypothetically in the future that they do create a separate module area where you can configure your mech a little bit to make it your own personal weapon system type thing to your specifics, so it's not interfering with the other modules. Laying down 3 million bills per module to tweak your mech a little bit with pros and cons is a little bit much, in my opinion. 1 million probably wouldn't be that bad, but I mean, I'd probably rather see it around 500 to 600, maybe 700,000.
Well, I mean, obviously, let's be realistic. I mean, there are sort of hey, here's a little bit of bonus, but you got to sink some in-game currency, as far as C-bills into them. It's free if you look at it from that perspective, but it's sort of a C-bill sink. Now, I totally agree with you. I'm cheap, and I have X amount of modules, and I haven't bought any more. But right now, obviously, with UI 2.0 and the whole module, finding it, which mech it's a nightmare right now, literally. So I'm holding off on getting any modules right now. I'm just playing moduleless, I guess, right now. But I don't know. It's just one of those things where what is the incentive for a player to take them? And then how easy is it to be able to acquire and or use? I mean, the reality of it is, for instance, okay, so right now, if I was to break down how many modules I have, and I was to look at the C-bill, total C-bill cost and GXP cost, I would say if the cost was a little bit lower, I would have actually bought more. Like, I mean,
right? I mean, even if they were half the cost of C-bills, like, I know myself included, that if I didn't have to search through my list of mechs to find a module, I would gladly buy a second one, but I'm not dumping 6 million. I would dump maybe 1 million into like 3 or 4 of the same modules, so I don't have to fiddle around and move everything all around. I could just select and go.
Yeah, because I mean, the reality of it is seismic is 6 million, but I've only bought, I think, 2 because I think I had to, because anyways, I lost one and then I found it. But my point being is, I could also I have 92 mechs right now in my main account. I would have bought, let's just say there were 500,000 or 750,000 C-bills, or maybe let's just say, 1 million max. I mean, I probably would have done that for the majority of the mechs, and now I'm spending more C-bills, which is a C-bill sink. But I think it's one of those things like, what is the point of the modules? Is it to keep you grinding away? Is it to keep you like, oh, I have to upgrade, it's always that sort of, I love collecting, I love upgrading, I want, that sort of stuff. To me, that's where it's at, is I wouldn't mind a little bit less cost overall, and I would actually buy more. I guess and I wouldn't even though I would end up spending more C-bills, I wouldn't care, because it's so nice to be able to hop into any one of my mechs, and I've already got target decay, I've already got seismic sensor, and then maybe I leave one open for whatever. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I mean, it all depends on the type of module as well. I mean, it's good to collect and stuff like that. But I mean, if we're talking weapon modules compared to support modules and stuff like that, it's got a completely different function. Whereas a support module gets used, like the UAV and your artillery and airstrikes and stuff like that. Whereas your weapon modules, yeah, you could probably collect those no problem. I think modules usage is something that comes up as, like, what's the point right now at the specific point in time.
Well, when I say what's the point, I'm saying from the design perspective. Like, what are they trying to achieve? Are you basically having to choose, something, and it out, like it's a it's almost like it's a give and take. There's pros and cons. Okay, I take the target decay and I take 3 others, but then I'm missing out on all the other ones. But the way I look at it is when all you see is a bunch of already being used, yeah.
Well, there's an opportunity cost to all of these modules, and I don't even know if rank 5, if it's going to be worth taking those over an arty. I mean, my thing was not just to reduce cost, but if you had a separate bank of modules, like say these weapon modification modules were part of your pilot customization slots instead of mech, where I could use them in tandem with things like Artemis or some of the other traditional modules, I'd be much more willing to do that.
Just to add on to what you're saying there, Centurion, I completely agree. I think if there was to be a separate module section, so like pilot modules or something like that, and then these were in them, I think it would be much more, because these modules, in my opinion, the weapon modules, tend to be more towards customization to your playstyle, and as such, to have them grouped in with other things like arty and stuff like that, they're going to be overlooked every time. If you want to make something that's going to be a C-bill sync, make a separate weapon module group section, either under the player profile or something like that, or for even just a second tier to the mech or something like that in the module selection. So you get your base modules and then like weapon modules, and then use these as an opportunity for players to sync C-bills into modules, which they can use to customize and play around with their mech a bit more.
If we're to look at it, right, so we're getting weapon modules, like I'm just, I'm visualizing this. We have maybe if we had chassis equipment modules, we had weapon modules. I mean, to me, instead of just checking a module slot, I mean, obviously they could do something a little bit more visually in the UI, as far as like, why not just call it instead of it just being a medium laser module, why not just call it something like a laser lens upgrade, and it's the same thing, but you're taking it more towards the battle tech lore of, I'm upgrading my lenses, or the focus beam in my lasers, for my medium lasers, you know what I'm saying? Makes it a little bit more towards like canon and lore, like in the universe, instead of it just being this thing. Does that make sense? Just, it's the exact same thing. You give it the benefits of, hey, you get an increase in range and a little bit more heat, but it's because I'm upgrading the laser lens or capacitor, or hey, I'm getting an increase in range in my ER large lasers. It's because of the focused capacitor or blah blah blah, whatever. Does that make sense? Instead of it just being, here's a medium laser upgrade. Well, what is or module upgrade? That doesn't. To me, I'm just always trying to look at it like, how does it fit into the universe?
Yeah, well, that's almost like in tactics, how there's different manufacturers can have medium lasers with different properties.
I mean,
for example, that kind of an example I think would work out well, but I think that has to be a separate module slot, or a separate slot, the customization option.
Definitely, I think the module should be split into like 2 or maybe even 3 different components. Like you have your overarching, like let's just call it support modules, and maybe have like 2 different support modules, which would be like the current ones as they are, like your targeting, arty, and that sort of stuff. And then you could have a second one, which would be like weapon modules, which could have like 2 or 3 other slots in it, and that would be specifically just for the weapon group modules, and then that way you could keep your sensors and targeting stuff like that, but then you could also play around with your mechs and have them a little bit more custom to your playstyle.
Yeah, and I mean, look at how the upgrades of a mech, right? You have your armor, you have your, equipment. If you could visualize this, right now, or last week we were talking, Tyler, I asked you about, would you be perturbed if they limited you to only having one, arty or airstrike? I almost feel like that you should only have one choice. You should have one size, one sensor, one, equipment, one weapon, module. And so you can almost imagine that's how that would be as well. So you'd have to pick and choose, and maybe you have a few items here or there. But I definitely, like I said, how they're currently implemented, I think it could be tweaked to be more, BattleTech canon, if you will, fitting into the lore. Oh, like, to me, it just doesn't feel very BattleTech to okay, well, what is this module? Put it in the context of BattleTech, and it makes, for me, a little bit more sense. And then obviously incentivize it, make each module unique as far as, you only have so many you can put on, and then you have to pick and choose. That way you don't have a stacking of stuff as well. Does that make sense? Like, if you only have one weapon module, then you have to choose, well, just one, not, I can take 3 or 4. Anyways, go ahead and moving on. I'm just gonna, I think the gist of it is basically to make the whole pilot skill system and the module system, we already have the whole speed increase and stuff, and we've talked a lot about it in the past of making each one unique, sort of like the quirk system, but to show that in the pilot skill system and all that. And I think the module system could be even something. Does it add a layer of complexity? Yes. Does it add a layer of, I would say, choice and variety? I think it does. Currently, what happens is everyone usually takes, the same thing. I always take target decay, or, like Jaeger, you guys were saying you would take, to an arty and an airstrike, and then one others. Obviously, it's always, to me, the modules are, it's just something that adds to the mech in a match, but it shouldn't be that overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be valuable enough and powerful enough to incentivize people to actually purchase it and sink their C-bills and GXP into it, but it can't be so, completely overpowering that it's all anybody's going to take. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'll come back to what Katarina and I were saying, that, it's, I don't think that they should be currently grouped in with, like, all of the other existing modules. Like, I think if we need more pilot tweaks, we need more abilities to specialize, and I think that's where they could really be successful.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. Obviously, we had Omni-Mech and Omnipod details. There's a few things in this write-up that I think are, things that we need to talk about. So let's go ahead and discuss this. The Clan XL, we had, speculated that, the whole survivability, their strengths, their weaknesses. Obviously, what it looks like is the Clan mechs are going to be able to pack a whole lot more firepower, but they're also going to be, could be slower than their IS counterparts. And, there was a few things that talking about XL engines, 2 crit slots in each torso. Obviously, they just announced that you have to destroy both the left and right torso and or the center torso. How do you guys feel about that in general?
Yeah, it sounds good. It's kind of what we were hoping for. It would, with the geometry of some of those clan mechs, we were kind of worried that, their side torsos seem very exposed. They're, jutting faces where the cockpits go. And yeah, this will definitely make them much more survivable.
Even in the reference to light mechs, you think it's a good call? Obviously, some of these light mechs have as much payload capacity as some of the IS medium and heavies. So do you think that will put them on par as they can't go as fast, obviously, because the engine, cap?
Well, that's right. The main problem with the Clan Light mechs so far, from what we've heard, is going to be the speed. Them going barely over 100 kph, they're not going to be able to keep up with the Inner Sphere Light mechs. So it'll make them slightly more survivable, but it almost seems like you're going to have to play them like almost like they're blackjacks in the same play style.
Yeah, the lights in BattleTech, it seemed like, were not meant to fight other lights. It was to be behind the mediums and the heavies, and basically just have the speed, I guess, and a little bit more maneuverability to be able to get around and help support, So it looks like maybe that'll be how it is. But I mean, when I was looking at it, the first thing that crossed my mind was of how much weapons they can take. And yeah, a spider or a fire starter or, you know, a Jenner may be quicker, but can you overcome that with just sheer firepower? So that'll be actually something I guess we'll see when they come out.
I think as far as engines being destroyed and stuff like that, I think that's as expected for anyone that's played the tabletop or familiar with BattleTech lore in general. We kind of, I think, all saw this somewhat coming if they stayed true to canon. And that's one of my biggest concerns as well with the light mechs, is that they're going to be going so slow that it might actually be really easy to core them out, and I have no problems with that.
Well, I mean, look at the Raven 4X and the 2X before they got the engine buff. I mean, and even still somewhat, but they're a lot better now. But before the Raven 2X and 4X, I mean, they went 130 and they were considered slow.
And I mean, even still now, I mean, I see some people in stock Ravens or even slow cicadas and stuff like that going around at 97, and they're just fodder. I mean, you're going to be almost a sitting duck if you're running an XL in your light.
Yeah.
When you're going 130 plus, the only thing you really have to worry about is another light that can catch up to you and keep up with you and engage. But when you're
anything that's voting streaks,
right? Not even so much that. Other light mechs are not the primary predators of other light mechs. It's large, high alpha pinpoint damage mechs that really tear the enemy lights down. And if you're going 100 kph, you're extremely easy to hit for one of those, sniper mechs. And we have inner sphere mediums right now, like you guys just said, that are boating 4 or 5 Streetcaster M2s. They'll be able to chase these poor clan light mechs forever. And they have the same armor points as, the inner sphere mechs, so it's not going to help them out too much.
Yeah, I just think of like the Shadowhawk I run. It's got 2 yard large and 4 streaks on it. That thing's going to be hunting a lot of these clan lights.
All right, so back on the whole topics of Omnimex and Clan XLs, I think we expected it. I think it was a good call. I think, and obviously we're going to be talking about the next another thing as far as protection. But let's go ahead and move on to something else in the notes, which was the heat sinks, and it was referring to the double heat sinks. Now they said something in here that I think is definitely noteworthy: the same efficiency as the IS mechs. Now I'm going to go ahead and give my opinion on this. I think it's a good call, and this is why. And some of you guys are like, no, it should be higher, blah, blah. I say no. I think obviously right now it's all on paper, unless they have it in game they can test, but this is why I think it's a good thing. The double heat sinks for clans are only 2 crit slots, which means you're going to be able to put more on your mech. And I feel like it's a balancing factor. Like if you were to buff them even more and give them even greater efficiency, I think you're going to have issues. And the one thing I do not want is the clan mechs coming in and it just being hey, you're more efficient and on the battle and better just because your equipment, not because your skill. And so that's one thing. So what are your guys' thoughts on the whole equal efficiency? Are you like it? Don't like it?
Yeah, totally fine with that. I think having an extra crit slot open per heatsink is enough of an advantage.
I completely agree. I mean, before you went, as soon as you brought up the topic, I didn't know if you were going to touch on it or not, but basically, yeah. In the space that you could fit 2 regular Innersphere heatsinks, you can fit 3 clan double heatsinks. I mean, heck, keeping them the same, or even if they went down to like 1.3, though I know fires will burn and pitchforks will be raised, you're still going to be coming out ahead at the same as the Innersphere. That's about it.
Yeah, I think
so much of the clan technology is going to be locked, like fixed, and you're not going to be able to really adjust things one way or the other, that I don't think this is bad at all. I think it's a pretty good balance.
Well, the reason I bring this up and I put it down and why I think is a noteworthy thing is because, double heat sinks and single heat sinks, gosh, it used to be this such big issue for double heat sinks when they said, hey guys, we're not doing 2.0, we're not doing 1.8, and a lot of people were upset about that, and it's horrible, blah blah blah. And it's like, you guys do realize, yes, the name says double, but just think of heat sinks having 0.7 efficiency instead of my point being is, it was a big deal back then, and obviously I don't think it is a big deal, especially clans, and how they're going to have some bonuses, and one of those being obviously is the weapon hardpoints. So yeah, Let's go ahead and move on to something else. Now, this wasn't mentioned in the notes, and it has not been confirmed, but this is one of the things that I'm going to reach out and talk to Paul about, and possibly just get in an official announcement on this, is the ability to add armor. And the reason I said this is no one has actually said, yes, you're able to increase the armor amount. Not change the armor. On OmniMechs, you can't change the stock armor as far as the type. If it's Pharaoh, it's Pharaoh. If it's standard, it's standard. But some of the clan mechs come stock with so little armor, even if you double it, how it currently is, that that they will be punched through like tinfoil. So I would love confirmation on this, because if it doesn't get changed, I feel like that's going to be a big deterrent towards taking clan mechs in general. And Tyler, comp scene wise, if they come with stock armor values, do you see that being an issue?
Yeah, it could just automatically make certain mechs non-viable for competition, and they just wouldn't be taken. And I don't think that's what PGI is aiming to do, but we'll see.
I mean, and, someone was like, well, that's the way it is, or at least that's how it says in the tech manual. I'm going to go on a limb and say, well, they're sacrificing something, right? I mean, they could put a heat sink on, they could put more weapons on. So what if, if I take a Timberwolf Prime and I want to drop the machine guns and medium pulse and, max it out as far as armor, I only have X amount I can take anyways, right? I mean, there's only a max you can take. But I feel like that's sort of an important part, because like the Summoner, very, very thin armor. The Lights, mediocre. Mediums are actually a sweet spot. If you look at the Nova stock armor values and you look at the Hunchback, even if the Hunchback was maxed, the Nova actually only has like 30 less points overall. So the mediums are actually a nice sweet spot for the clan mechs. But I think we need confirmation on that, because it's a pretty important part. One mech, Hellbringer, anybody? If it ever is introduced, it has paper thin standard armor, like paper thin.
I mean, do you think there's a potential for them to use the fixed amount of armor between variants as a balancing factor for if one variant, say, has more hard points in like an arm than, say, another one? Like the one with the less, a single energy hard point maybe has more armor?
The only thing I could see is if they keep to where you can't add armor, go ahead and introduce clan mech weapons as being more powerful. Like you'd almost have to make clan mechs be almost OP to an extent. That borderline of they do a lot more damage, because your time on field may be relatively short, so you have to get it done really quick. Does that make sense? I mean, like, if you can't take a whole lot of damage, you need to be able to dish out just as much. So in how they've balanced, MWO so far, and they've stated, and I still feel they need to double the internal structure values, just like they did armor. I still think it just needs doubled. But the time to death ratio, obviously this depends. I know this isn't like a fixed percent or whatever, and there's so many variables that go into it: skill, what weapons, all that fun stuff. I just feel like, are the clans going to come in here with a crutch? They're already going to have, just a weight on their foot, and they're already sinking, and they have to fight against that. And, someone could say, oh, well, it's, they have to be better, they have to be better skilled, and stuff like that. But I feel like that's the trade-off they're going to have to do.
From what we've heard of their ideas for clan weapon balancing already, it seems like their weapons are going to be plenty powerful. So to make all the weapons even more powerful, just to compensate for a couple mechs that have slightly less armor, because there's still going to be the dire wolf striding around out there, and it has as much armor as an Atlas. So you don't want to give it buffs because its cousins are weaker armored. So I'm thinking really all they could do if they don't let you change the armor would be to put a few mech quirks. They've introduced that system for certain mechs to make them better, either through mobility, or they could do it in that way through, slight increases in damage or something for their weapons.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see, me personally, I wouldn't want to see chassis-specific quirks to where just because that mech is deficient in some things that it gets a bonus in like damage. That's one thing I wouldn't want to see. Like magical, the awesome does more damage with its PPCs. I've never liked that idea. And yes, the direwolf will be striding around, and there will be mechs like the Timberwolf that have good amount of armor and firepower and stuff like that. but also the size of the direwolves. Just because it's big and strong doesn't mean it's going to be the end all be all. And I feel like adding armor it's just a must. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you need to be able to add more if you want it. And I mean, you're sacrificing other stuff. Let me at least upgrade, or not upgrade. Let me at least add armor. I think at the end of the day, it needs to be done.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a minute. Would you trade armor for an ability to have a quirk that allowed you to bypass ghost heat to a certain extent? Going back to your awesome example, which I know is not a clan, say you could mount that third PPC on an awesome and not face the penalty.
Well, then, I don't know. To me, I still, and I've said this in the past, I don't think ghost heat is the end all be all. I feel like maybe down the road they can sit down and rethink how that's handled. Obviously, it's very difficult for a new player. They did mention, by the way, I think in the notes, that there will be some type of indicator for a new player, to when they put, let's say, 3 large lasers on a mech, it'll actually tell them, hey, you're going to have an increase in heat. But that being said, I don't know. It's just one of those things. I have no problem with making some of these chassis that are subpar on par. But look at the Hunchback. And I know we're getting off topic here. Look at the Hunchback 4J. It just got a decrease in its hunch overall. I've actually had a few pilots that are good high elo say that's the best Hunchback right now because the hitboxes and it doesn't have that. And I've loved it for a while, but because just the change of geometry on a few of the Hunchbacks now have made some of the worst Hunchback now actually decent. And so that's what I think. I know I'm going off on a limb. I've talked about the awesome as far as its perks and this and that. Doesn't matter how good and efficient that mech is at firing. If it's still a barn door, it's still going to be able to be taken out.
Speaking of which, real quick, speaking of Hunchbacks and quirks, a little off topic, I would like to see, and that's not my idea, but to be able to put more armor on that hunch to compensate for its geometry, more than the standard amount you're allowed to put on a 50-ton mech's right torso.
I thought about that. I thought about that actually in the past, and this is why I came to the conclusion I don't like it, because of the Highlander 733C. If you allow to be able to strip armor off another location and or add armor, unless it was per mech as far as per location. For instance, Hunchback 4G and 4H, you can do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's all I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's just those, 4H, 4G,
yeah.
4P.
I have no problem with that to an extent, but I think what they should do anyways is just reduce the overall hunch, just like the 4J, by 1/3. The 4H and the 4G and the Gridiron now reduce the overall length of it. I mean, to me, I was playing around in the 4J and I was playing around in the 4SP, and it was a world of difference compared to the 4G and the 4H. So I just think that instead of introducing a whole nother mechanic, or that's basically what it is when you look at the overall scheme of things. But I also feel like that's something that BattleTech never really addressed, right? Because they didn't have to. It was random hit location and stuff like that. So as far as that goes, Tyler, I actually wouldn't be opposed to it. I would just like, a little bit more thought, I guess, put into specific, like what mechs get what. Some, might not get it at all, and blah, blah, blah. And could it be abused to an extent? Those are the type of things. But I think giving some chassis the ability to tank more in some roles, like, that's one thing BattleTech never did as well, to where they created, some of these weird, unique tweaks and abilities to a specific chassis based on its lore almost, right? Like, what's the point of having this huge hunch if it doesn't give you added protection? Or why does it have a hunchback or huge hunch, but yet all the other mechs equipped with an AC-20 don't? Like the Atlas. Why does the Atlas only have just the barrel,
How about
and it has this
example, the Trebuchet 7K. In its left torso, the AC-20 can fit in there, and it's completely contained just in its little side torso.
Yeah, so, to me, I think fixing the mechs and the geometry themselves would actually make it that particular variant and chassis better overall than adding a new system. But I'm okay with an idea like that to make certain mechs viable or at least better on the battlefield, I should say. But anyways, let's go and move on. We're way off topic. We've got the next thing we have is on the Omnimex, we have the hand and lower arm actuator are removed if you place a autocannon, PPC, or there was one other weapon. I forgot, what was it? Anybody else? Off the top of my head, I should have wrote them down. Where I find this unique is, does that mean, let's just say, metaphorically speaking, I have a clan Omnimech and it does have a hand actuator and I add a PPC. Does that remove just the hand actuator so I still have that side-to-side movement and I get the addition of an extra crit slot? Or does it remove the hand and the lower arm actuator and now I have no side-to-side torso, side-to-side dual reticle? Because I think that's pretty important. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love the Victor with the AC-20, is that I have that side-to-side mobility with extra reticle. So the way I read it was, if you place one of those weapons, it will remove one of those. But if the mech only has a lower arm actuator and you place one of those weapons, it removes the lower arm, and it's a lot like the Jaeger, where it doesn't have the side-to-side movement, or the K2 and stuff like that. Did you guys read that anywhere else? And do you see any gameplay implications to this?
Well, you get crit slots back, and with, all the space-saving clan weaponry, and we just talked about the heat sinks earlier, you may be able to fit a double heat sink without your hand and lower arm actuator in there that you otherwise wouldn't if you're searching for space.
Well, remember too that Omnimechs have fixed ferrofibrous, or I should say fixed armor and internal crit slots. So for instance, ferrofibrous and Endo right now on an IS mech, they're dynamic, right? You use up all the crit slots on your right arm, they'll shift as long as you have free space. The clan mechs, though, that's fixed. So you only have X amount of crit slots on your right or left arm at any given time. So I could see where doing this, and this is basically, by the way, straight from the tech manual. This is very Battletech-esque that no other previous game has done. I mean, obviously, because all previous games, especially MechWarrior 4, you can see they tried, but they fell short in a lot of regards.
Well, with that, I hope everybody knows that the clan ferrofibrous armor and endosteel armor only take up 7 crit slots each. So 14 total for your whole mech, and you get both of those advantages. So it's not like you're going to be scraping for space. It's not like it's 14 for each like it is in the Intersphere mechs.
Yeah, but that might have implications of you have a ballistic in your right arm, but you may not be able to fit an AC or UAC 20, with the clans.
Be about all they can do to balance, a direwolf from taking out 3 UAC 20s and just ending every game.
All right, so we also had one other thing on the Omnimex, which was confirmation again on no mix tech. I was actually very happy about this because when we did the multiple part interview with Brian Ekman, they said they were tossing around the idea, and obviously when they said this, they and they announced it, they said we don't want an arms race, which if you allowed mixed tech, that's what it would be. So I'm really glad they did that, and I think that'll be that's a good stance to take to the whole mixed and not mixed, and I'm looking forward to it. So let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. Obviously, we have UI 2.0. Obviously, we had our hands on this a while ago. We had it a few weeks ago. We all know that it has its issues. So that being said, so we don't beat a dead horse, what are actually some good things? I'm just going to ask one of you guys one at a time. What's one thing that actually you like? And then we'll ask one thing that you hope is changed. Let's go and start with Brandon.
One thing I liked about UI 2.0, finally full screen and not a windowed mode. Just full screen, Mech Lab, able to see it. Yay, finally.
I concur, good sir. Mech porn in all of its glory. Dude, I'm on a 1440 screen. I've been waiting a long time for this, yes. All right, what about you, Tyler?
Good thing, I would say it's nice to be able to see what your group mates are taking as far as mechs in the group window.
Good detail.
There's been quite a few competitive matches that have had to be aborted because somebody took a mech they weren't supposed to, therefore had an illegal drop deck and everybody has to suicide. And that's never fun because it's already difficult enough to sync drop. So
Gotcha.
That's excellent to see.
Yeah, I noticed that today when I was playing with Garth and Nash. What about you, Jason? What's one good thing?
The overall aesthetic. I like the being able to see my mechs up close and personal and a lot more detail. And but just the overall aesthetic. I think it looks a little more futuristic, and I don't know. I like it.
The one thing that I would point out that I love about UI 2.0. Obviously, I agree with everything you guys just said. The one thing for me, no mech load times. Oh my gosh, I wasted I literally probably, if you added up the amount of time I had to wait from the load screen, the mech lab to come in after a match, hours. I would probably say too many hours that I don't want to think about. No load times. Noticed that yesterday and today when playing. Boom, straight in the mech lab. You hit ready, you can launch instantaneously. Thank God, because the amount of mechs, I think it was tied into back-end system, was atrocious. So anyways, don't have to worry about that. So happy, kudos. All right, so obviously, let's go ahead and move on to the bad things, or things that, one thing that you'd want fixed in particular. Obviously, there's a lot of forum threads going on right now. I know we have it at our NGNG forums. We also have it over at Reddit. And by the way, they are reading. I have talked to Garth. I've talked to Brian. They are looking at feedback, and obviously they're going to be implementing a ton of changes. Apparently, February 18th is going to be a big patch as far as UI is concerned. So that being said, let's go ahead and start with the last person we asked. Jason, what is one bad thing that, or something that you'd like adjusted?
Sure. Well, I have a pretty significant list, but if I'm going to pick one, I would say that when I go into tweak a mech and I want to go try out a different build, and I say like, I was watching Jaeger and he was on his Twitch channel doing this, and I'm going to try that with my mech. And I go in there and I put a bunch of tweaks on there, maybe weapons I don't own already. In the old UI, I used to be able to do that, see how they could fit in the mech, see what the heat cost was going to be, and really get an idea of the mech before I hit my purchase button. And I don't seem to be able to do that anymore. When I go in to modify mechs, if I don't already own anything, I have to buy the weapons individually right up front, then place them on the mech, and then be able to see the end result. And I don't like that. I used to really like being able to play around with a bunch of things before I had to commit to an overall price.
What about you, Tyler?
A bad thing, well, there's, like Centurion said, there's quite a few, but the whole, customizing your mech interface, I'm not a big fan of it, and I was pretty excited a few weeks ago when we had Russ on here. He said a few things they wanted to get in before the 4th was a Smurfy-like interface, and like I said, I was happy to hear that, but unfortunately that's not out quite yet. Maybe in the next patch, like you said, but it's just a little too difficult switching through your different slots on your mechs. You can't, click the actual location on the physical, picture of your mech anymore it's just like that location. So it just takes longer to do things.
I think someone said it pretty good. I saw a comment over Reddit. It was like something about the functionality of the old UI, but with the aesthetics of the new one. And, I think they did a great job with the old one. I mean, even though it was dated, I think, in some regards, it was pretty much streamlined to what we needed, right? I mean, as far as, okay, hey, you needed this info, boom, there it is. So, all right, Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, there's a large list of things which I could say, but right now it's definitely, I'm feeling the pain of the added clicks and the unneeded backpedaling to add stuff. So what I'm referring to is, like, for example, in the old UI, when I was doing a mech, I could easily select a tab, add the upgrades to my mech, and then go back to the weapons and just go seamless like that. Now I have to strip everything. That's the first thing I do when I get a mech in the new UI is strip everything off. Have to go save it, so no engine, no weapons, no anything. Go then back to the mech lab, find upgrades, add the upgrades I want, save it, go back to the mech lab, go back to the weapons, and then click every single weapon slot to add my weapons back onto it. It's not streamlined, it's not efficient. It's just sloppy, in my opinion.
My one thing that just, I really hope, and obviously I know the Smurfy is coming, and Paul has posted up, obviously, some mock-ups, and I do have confirmation they will be doing that. They've heard the call, they understand why it's so important. But for me is, even with the Smurfy, I like seeing the mech, sort of like how, the old, 1.5, if you will, UI before 2.0. I like actually being able to see your mech and click on the location of the mech. And I think even with their current UI, if they just rearrange some stuff, and we've seen mock-ups from a few community members, but even just functionality to me would be a big thing. Having to go from the left side of your screen, I'm on a 1440 P screen all the way down to the bottom right. Just be able to remove said item. That item list, the what's equipped could definitely be right there, right next to the menu on the left. That would make things a little bit easier. But obviously, there's a lot of things that the functionality isn't quite there yet. But I will say, we wanted UI 2.0. They set a date. They delivered. So kudos to them. I mean, that's one thing. A lot of people, just want to jump on the, oh my gosh, it's not perfect bandwagon. They said it wasn't going to be perfect. We knew it wasn't going to be perfect, but it's out. I mean, and that to me, that's a big thing. They delivered on a date. Boom. There you go. So I think in my books, that's a positive. So I guess everyone takes it, the way they want it. But yeah, UI 2.0, I'm looking forward to the changes. Obviously, one thing you mentioned, Tyler, was the groups and the information. I really see how that would evolve to where you'd know more, being able to chat and drag that chat window around. I mean, there's a ton of stuff like that I cannot wait to have in there, because it's just gonna be the icing on the cake. I
had Lindsay go ahead and try it out on her account last night, and she's a very casual player and hasn't picked up the game in a couple months. And the one thing that stood out for her was the when you go down to the little bars, the little yellow bars that fill in like armor, firepower, heat management, and so on. She's like, oh, I guess my stalker's only got 65 in firepower. I guess that's not really that good. And I had to explain to her that 250 scale is not really, a reasonable maximum scale. Which I thought that was pretty interesting from like a new player perspective that I wouldn't have even given a second thought.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I liked about the Lee Song Mech Lab, showing the graph and the damage fall off and all that, information. Definitely helped you bring it into, context of actually using it. But all right, moving on from UI 2.0, let's go and dive into a topic that I think is very pertinent, which is the direct impact weapons. Tyler, you've mentioned this. We've mentioned this. And right now, you pretty much have, two categories. You have, autocannons, PPCs, and of course you have Gauss. But I would say Gauss right now, because of the mechanic, is sort of not in the same ballpark as autocannons and PPCs. Obviously, how they're implemented right now, and looking towards the clans, and how UACs and the random jam mechanic, and how the meta has always been to load up as much as you can as far as direct impact and to be able to do, high amounts of volley damage. What do you see as far as gameplay implications for the autocannons and the PPCs, and would you change anything?
I think I was absent last podcast, but I did give it a listen, and I think what Tyler said is that it kind of comes back to the common denominator. Only things is the PPCs, and so I think that if I could rewind time, I would have taken the Gauss charge up and put it on the PPC, and then been done. Or done something else. Maybe you make the primary point of contact do the majority of damage, and maybe has a little bit of splash, so it's not as pinpoint of a weapon. That electrical charge kind of cascading over the other areas of the mech, something like that. But PPCs seem to be the common denominator whenever you bring up the pinpoint problem.
What about you, Brian?
I've been toying around with the ideas and concepts in my mind every now and then. If I was to have my way with the Gauss rifle and PPCs, 1, I'd strip the recharge time off the Gauss rifle, period. 2, I would add a small charge time on the PPC. And 3, another quirk I'd add to the PPC, and this is a little bit odd, is per PPC on the mech, increase the recycle / reload time, whatever you want to call it, on the PPCs. So
you hate the awesome, Katra.
I hate the awesome. That barn door. No, I think it'd be an interesting mechanic to toy around with, because, I don't know. That's just what I've been playing around with.
What about you, Tyler? What would you change or adjust?
I played MechWarrior 4 a few weeks ago, and the autocannons in that game take a kind of a duration kind of thing. They don't go in a single shell. They, spit out kind of like the lasers do in this game. So that's a possible thing they could do, is to limit the direct damage that the autocannons do. And as far as the PPC, I've thought maybe about implementing some kind of mechanic, like the PPC still does 10 damage, but it does 7 damage to a single location, and it spreads the remaining damage to adjacent hit locations. So, say if you hit an enemy mech in the center torso, it would do 7 damage to the center torso and 1.5 to the left torso, 1.5 to the right torso, something like that. Just to limit the pinpoint a little bit more.
I would like to see something like the MechWarrior 3 autocannons come back. I mean, I remember the very first mission you drop on, you have the Bushwhacker and you press the autocannon, boop, 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 and it fires off a few rounds. And it takes as far as like, obviously there isn't a random jam mechanic. It would spread damage. It had a little bit of recoil as well. And to me, I've always wanted that. I've always wanted that difference. And obviously, as far as gameplay, you can definitely see where it would help, everything. I mean, right now, we were talking about that last week of, lasers being, linked as far as, or lasers being separate because of the duration and the beam duration. And PPCs have always been linked with, first it was the Gauss rifles and autocannons back then. And now, obviously, the go-to is autocannons and PPCs. I think just making autocannons unique and then looking at the whole UAC and jam mechanic, can you make it skill based? Being able to hold your reticle if it shakes and kicks back because of recoil on one location. Those are the type of things I would love to see. But I think one of the things why I bring this up is because I saw someone basically post up, obviously it was a mock-up, but looking at the future with the different UACs, Tyler, you mentioned the Direwolf earlier, and there's, going to be other mechs as well, because IS also get those type of weapons. Being able to basically annihilate someone in 1 or 2 shots with multiple, UAC 10s and 20s.
You guys would know a lot more than I have, but has there ever been a game that has dealt with recoil, like significant recoil, when you have some of the bigger guns come into play?
Yes, MechWarrior 3 had a little bit of a recoil system, but I think that's the only one.
Yeah, it had a recoil as well, especially with the UACs. Like it would, I remember specifically. You can look up the video too of the first. It kicked, like for instance, if you were to fire, it was in the right arm. You would sort of, it would almost bring your shoulder back, if you will, and keeping your aim on one location. It's one of those things because I always look at the gameplay like, why do people take those setups? Why is it that PPCs AC5s? Why has it always been this shift? Why don't you see PPCs and beam weapons, lasers and stuff being used? As far as like alpha and stuff like this, it's because they don't sync. And I'm just looking at the whole autocannons and PPCs. Will we ever see PPCs, be changed, whether a charge mechanic like we've talked about in the past, or, desyncing them? Obviously, we just saw the AC 10s and 20s be desynced per se. So that's what I'm wondering is, I always see an issue with high volley damage. I say alpha. A lot of times that can be confused with the process of alpha firing all of your weapons. That's why I usually say volley. But a large amounts of volley damage to one location, I see that as a problem. And obviously the Highlander 733C, the current meta, 2 PPC AC10, or now 2 AC5s, UAC5s, PPCs, that's where I see an issue. And is it going to get any better? That's what I try to look at is, and what can be done to, adjust that or fix that.
Yeah, I think it'd be hilarious, though, if you had a significant amount of recoil on some of the bigger weapons and you were trying to, jump snipe in one of those and then you can get your shot off, but you're also going to, spin like 90 degrees before you hit ground again.
That'd be an interesting mechanic. Just thinking out loud here would be if you shoot a ballistic or something like that, well, in the air, to have a small bit of torso twist added to your mech and kind of, depending on location of the ballistic.
Well, the whole reason I bring up the whole MechWarrior 3 is, okay, so what we're looking at is we're looking at being able to fire a weapon and be pinpoint accurate and deliver all of its weapons damage to one location. That's how current autocannons are in PPCs. And even Gauss, but at least as a skill-based mechanic, right? I mean, you have to charge, you have to be able to time it, and you release and stuff like that. All right, lasers. It's a duration based. Doesn't do all of its damage to one location unless you hold it on target for its full entire duration. When you look at the MechWarrior 3, I don't remember MechWarrior 4. I don't know why that is. I can remember 3, but not 4. But when you look at MechWarrior 3's mechanic for that, you have the capability of doing all of that damage to one location, but also takes skill. You may spread it around a little bit. And that is one of the issues we're talking about, right? Being able to deliver high amounts of volley damage to one location. And it really takes not a whole lot of skill to be able to do it. Pull trigger, boom, there you go. You know, desyncing, having unique weapons and stuff like that. That's what I guess I'm trying to look at.
Yeah, I'm even thinking like on the smaller ones like AC2s. I mean, even like an M16 or something like that. I mean, I'm doing a real world equivalent here, but you know, 3-round burst is a lot easier to keep center mass. But you know, hold down that full auto, you're going to walk the gun up, where you know you have to really put concentrated effort to keep your barrel down. So I could see something like that for even like rapid fire ACs going into play, which I think would be pretty neat. I welcome it because then it would make every shot like a skill shot.
Well, even if you were to say, okay, you know, it's a future, your targeting computer, you know, handles all that. Okay, I could get that. But also how they handled it was your autocannon shot out X amount of rounds. And it even talks about it in lore and stuff. But so even if it was, you had a slight recoil depending on the, you know, caliber of the autocannon, you had to, you know, force, you know, if you will, you know, hold your reticle on place. Maybe there's a little bit of shake or, you know, whatever type. It's still, it changes it up to where it's not all the damage is in one shell, one round, one hit, you know. And obviously that would change a lot of things. I mean, you're talking dynamically changing a big weapon system in the game. Yeah, I think there could be many different ways. You know, people have talked about doing, you know, a clip, if you will, type system to where you fire X amount and then it, you know, has to reload, you know, and stuff like that. But all right, let me get your guys' quick impressions on the Firestarter. Brandon, what do you think?
I've dropped a couple times in it. I absolutely love it. That being said, it still suffers from a few things, such as spider syndrome, where basically if you take a shot anywhere, you're pretty much done.
I had an issue today where my mech just stopped. I don't know if I clipped through a terrain or whatever it was, but then I was taken out shortly after, or I got just totally annihilated. But my overall impressions are this actually might be the first light mech that I enjoy. I'm gonna go out on a limb. I was having a lot of fun. I had AMS on the damn thing. I was using machine guns for like not the first time ever, but like I love it, and it can dish out some damage really quickly, especially you get internal structure with those machine guns. It's over. But my first impressions are like it. Can't wait to see the next. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I played it for a few hours last night, and it has the opportunity to really compete with the Jenner for light spots in higher tonnages. The machine guns aren't so good at engaging other light mechs, so in light drop weights and drop decks, it's not going to be very prevalent. At least the Ember variant. But so far, so good. And I'm going to have to kind of disagree with Katra, even though one time last night I did get one shot out the back right torso. The rest of the night, it feels like it's can spread the damage much, much better than the Jenner. The Jenner, pretty much all you ever get shot in is the center torso and the legs. But the Firestarter, you're able to take it all over your body. And even though you rely on your arms for the, medium lasers in most cases, using that, taking hits to the arm is better than taking hits to the CT and being dead.
I have to agree with you, Tyler. I tanked like a freaking brick, dude. Like, it was great. I was spreading damage. I only died a few times to, CT but that was because my left torso. I mean, you were asking me earlier, Brennan, you remember I was, my right torso was opened up, but I was still alive. I loved it. I think it actually did a really good job. I mean, especially the torso twist rate on it, being able to spread that. I don't know. It just worked really well for me. Jason, have you been able to play this thing yet?
No. I've been very tempted. I mean, it looks great, but I made the prudent step or big mistake. I don't know which way you want to categorize it at the beginning of the year to create a budget. And I looked back on MechWarrior Online and totaled up how much I've spent on the game already, and was pretty surprised. So I'm kind of on a hiatus right now. Again, and I don't know if I'd have to spend about $15 to pick that thing up because I don't have any MC currently, and I just don't know if I want to bite on that because I've already got 52 other mechs that I can play. Did
you ground yourself? Is that what you did?
Yeah, I'm trying to get married this year. And when I'm looking at that and thinking about $15 increments on a video game here and there, especially when I can buy an entire game on Steam for that same amount, like spending that on just one mech when I already have so many to play.
Yeah.
Just a little hard to justify at this point.
I was going to say, I used to rag on Darren all the time about World of Tanks and how much money he spent on that thing. But, hey, to each his own. You're not out, partying, drinking, or out spending on other hobbies, like paintball or I don't know. Yeah, to each his own. Like I said, I totally understand putting yourself on a budget. And to anyone who's out there listening, don't mech with that, outside of your means. That's what I'll do.
Well,
be the mature one.
Well, it's been dangerous, and this game has been really dangerous for me because, I'd get a check and be like, I could spend a little bit. Sure, I'll put another 25 in. Why not? And, it was only after I looked back on, the entirety of my C-bill purchases since I came aboard that I really got the full picture.
So think about this time next year, there's going to be some pretty broke clanners, because they're going to do it. They're going to have heroes, all those clanners, and some of you guys... All right, guys, I just want to say again, thank you again for coming out. We do have something really, really cool for you guys to check out. If you have not done so already, we got a link for you guys. Duncan Fisher created a sort of a short story audio book, and it's called The Last Contender. And this is around 54 minutes long, so it's pretty lengthy. So if you get some extra time, maybe download it, listen to it while you're at work, wherever you are. But give him some feedback. He did this on his spare time, and that's recording something for 54 minutes and editing and stuff like that. So freaking sweet. Also, next on the list is the Lisong Mech Lab tool. I've been using this a lot. Check out the YouTube video we have on this. It's just a basic introduction to it. Now, because the game patched on Tuesday, the tool has been having a parsing error. I already contacted her. By the time you probably listen to this, it's probably already been fixed. She updates it pretty much all the time. So I think because it's a new patch, she'll have to make some adjustments. But love it. It's basically like, it's my mech fitting tool now. I actually I haven't even had to use Smurfy, so that's actually been really nice. Just to be able to have it on my other screen. Boom, there it is. Check it out. And give her some feedback. She's put I don't know how many hours. She said something around the lines of 26,000 plus lines of code to create it. So I'm all for supporting stuff like this. I think it's awesome. And a big thank you to our community, you guys here, live studio audience, our listeners, new and old, and our amazing staff, and our sponsors. Thank you so much for becoming sponsors. And of course, if you want to help things out, just become a sponsor. Head over to our website. And of course, if you can't do that, maybe you're doing some shopping. Don't forget, click on that Amazon affiliate link. It gives a small kickback to us without adding anything to your cost. This was your local No Guts, No Galaxy MechWarrior podcast. Signing off for tonight. This is Phil.
This is Brandon, also known as Catcher Cal.
This is Jason.
This is Tyler.
Until next time, Mech Warriors.
It'd be best if you avoid me, but I know you probably can't. You sense something is wrong with me. You can feel it on my skin, but there is more with it. You probably thought it was normal, just a little off. The truth is, at one time I was, but now I'm a robot.